There's something out there waiting for us. And it ain't no man.
Don't you even know how to be a real Indian?
Well, sometimes they have to kill us. They have to kill us. Because they can't break our spirit.
Hey everybody, it's Ian. Back again for another episode of Native Film Talk, and today I'm talking with Nathalie Standingcloud. Natalie's many things. She's a tattoo artist. She's really just an artist and a creator in general. And most notably, one of her recent works that people know her from is episode 5, Aunties and Res Dogs. But I wanted to get Nathalie on here really because of the significance of episode 5, and I wanted to talk to somebody who was in the episode of just like, what was that like? Because as a viewer, it was like, I've never seen anything like that in terms of like Native women representation, and I've always talked about it on how terrible Native women are represented in film and television, and I think it's a big contributor to why like MMIW is such an issue, both from the people who commit the acts and then also the invisibility to it. It's just we're not given a true vision of who Native people are, so there's just this stereotype that just circulates and it just perpetuates this terrible cycle. And so to see something like that, it's just like finally, like we see it, and it's great. And I was excited to have Nathalie come on because I wanted to talk about that, but also her work. You know, she's a theater actor, she's a tattoo artist, she's now an on-screen actor, and I just am fascinated by the many things that she does, and I think the listeners would like to hear about the many things that she does as well, and also her perspective in working in the industry and talking about Native representation in film and TV. So, Nathalie, thank you so much for coming on. You're the second Nathalie on the show. I had Nathalie Benali on, who's another actor as well.
Cool.
Yeah. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay. See you on the God. Hello, everybody. My name's Nathalie Standingcloud. I'm from Oklahoma. My maternal tribes are Salish, Kootenai, Wenatchee, and Colville, and my paternal tribes are Cherokee and Creek. And I'm an artist in all types of forms. Any ways I can get creative and help people tell their stories or tell my stories. Just a storyteller in general. Been acting ever since I was 6, been drawing ever since I could hold a pencil. Wow. And I found a beautiful way to combine both of those into a career for myself.
That's the best way to do it. Sounds like you love what you do. That's the best thing, right?
I do, yeah. So I tattoo full time, and then I'll do the acting gigs as they come along.
Oh, okay. So you tattoo full time. I saw, that you had given tattoos to some of the cast members of Res Dogs.
I did. Yeah. I did. So you want to talk about the episode?
Sure, let's go right ahead. Let's get into it.
It was a week-long experience for me. I knew going in that I was going to be acting with the big stars like Tamara, Sarah, and Jana, and Tam or Taz, Tazba. Oh my gosh, I'm just shaking even thinking about it, just because how excited and just fulfilled I was after that week. How do I start this? Tattoos. So at the end of that week, we decided that I told them that I was a tattoo artist, and once I did, their faces just lit up and they were all about it.
Nice.
So after that, I was able to tattoo Jana, Tamara, and Sarah, and I also got the matching tattoo myself later when I was able to have somebody at my work do it for me. Let's see if I can. Am I flexible enough? Can I show you?
Right ahead.
Let's see if I can throw it up here. Can you see it? Where is it? My tattoo.
There we go.
You can kind of see it. It's like a Dakota floral that we created together. Okay. But so I tattooed them, and it was really honorable. It's really special. That week, geez. I've performed with the 1491s before. So I've been previous friends with Sterling, Ryan, Mig, Bobby, and Dallas. There was actually a time in my life when I was traveling with them, doing like comedy skit shows, doing like a tour, going college campuses and getting on stage for like an hour or so and just being goofy. But I was like the only woman in the group. If Bobby couldn't be there, I'd fill for his spot, or if Mig couldn't be there, I'd pitch in for him, or step in for him. And it was a great experience. Obviously, I'm very thankful for having the guys bring me into their circle. And so later down the line, when Sterling created the show, it was just like such a blessing to have them remember me and bring me back in to help me shine for this episode. And I've done movies, I've done plays, but this was my first TV show.
Yeah.
And I was just, excited just to have my one little bit in the first season. I'm in the first season. In the second episode, I'm in the optometry receptionist scene.
Yep.
After that, everybody was like, Natalie, are you going to be in season 2? Are you going to be in season 2? And I was like, I don't know. I'm not going to bother Sterling and ask, because I trust him, and I'm going to let him do his thing. And if they want me back, then I'm there,
Mm-hmm.
And so to come back for the second season and to be in this episode, it was just a mind blower for me, honestly. I was so excited, and very just grateful to be working next to these wonderful warrior women of actors. I'm a big fan of Jana. I just had finished watching Rutherford Falls. Tomorrow's on, I think it's Outer Banks. I was watching her on.
And the Outer Range. Yeah, such a good show. Yeah.
Sarah, Bear's mom, I was so excited to be able to really meet her and talk to them. And throughout this week of rehearsal and filming, we really created a really good sisterhood after that. That dance rehearsal though, oh my gosh, that dance
looked rough. I'm impressed. And you did in heels, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. And with all that jewelry and makeup on too, and the jacket, I had to dance with the jacket on. I was like, do I wear it all the way on, or do I just kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But we made it work. We all worked really hard on that dance routine, and goodness, it turned out great for how much work we put into it. Also, I seen your little tidbit of what you wrote on Instagram about your take of the episode. Yeah, us changing tampons on TV, us just being, real aunties, real Native women on TV, us being sexy, but in our own way and not being objectified was really huge for all of us.
Yeah.
Jana said that, her being a bigger woman, just to be able to use her body in the way that she wants to use it and be seen like that in her own power, in her own way, was really, just life-changing for her too, gosh.
What I was jealous of, as a Native person, it's like I wish I could just get behind the scenes episodes just on that one, just to hear like the cackle and the laughs and like being how silly everyone was, and to see
Jana was on top of it with her improvising.
Oh my gosh.
A lot of her lines were just like coming off the top of her head, and I'm such by the book person. I'm just like, those are the lines, that's what I say.
Yeah.
But I was like learning so much from them too, of just how they just pop off with that. It was amazing.
Man, that's so cool.
Natural. It's so fun.
Mm-hmm. It looks like so much fun, and I've talked to Riker Six Killer. He was on the show previously, and Bobby Wilson was on the show previously, and hearing both of them talk about just what life is like on that set is insane. Like, one is like those of them that have been around and for a while, like everyone, it's like even hearing non-Native people talk about it, like Bobby Wilson and Bill Burr, when they go and talk about the Res Dog show, they're like, that set is like nothing like you've ever seen. One, it's in Oklahoma, it's not in LA.
Right.
But it's a very like family setting, and it's a very like everyone is the same here, like respect whose homeland you're on. And we're just here to do the job. Everyone has an important part to play. And it's very, very, very much Native in a way of looking at things. And I really appreciate that perspective. Because it's like, man, that's how it should be. I don't like this like caste system that like Hollywood seems to have, where it's
right. So
yeah.
Off of that. So I was also in Killers of the Flower Moon, and that set compared to the Res Dog set, it's a movie versus a TV show. It's a way bigger budget compared to our budget, but also just like the energy of the hierarchiness on the Killers of the Flower Moon set versus Res Dog set was so night and day different. You have to be professional in both settings to get work done, but there's a way about it that can be done with kindness and respect and like team leadership fellowshipness. You know what I mean?
No, I understand.
That's like, I don't know. I get that you have to be serious sometimes and get, stuff done when you're working with like, that much money or that many people. But I feel like there's a better way to go about it, that people don't feel snubbed or, like extras are being taken care of just as well as leads are being taken care of, and on the Res Dog set, it just felt like you said, it felt like family. It felt like a party, like a get together. We were all there and we all wanted everyone to win. We're all supporting each other, and it wasn't about a job or money. It was just coming together and telling a story. That is
a huge, what you said just now, wanting to see everybody win. That's huge, because Sterling he could have completely came from the other perspective of like, I feel like historically we've almost had a mindset of scarcity where it's like, this is we have so limited opportunities that we really got to knock this one out the park. So I'm going to really be guarded with this one. I'm only going to let certain people in, or I'm going to have like creative control because I don't want it to get too outside of the bounds. Where I feel like Stolen came in, and I've heard him say this to a certain degree, where it's just like, fuck it. If we finally get this chance, let's just tell the most native possible story, ever. And people love it, like people can see that authenticity and people like feed off of it because this is like the truest, I feel like, representation we've had, where it's like in long form anyway, like it's a TV show. We get so many different cracks of like showing what Native people look like. I mean, I'm working on my Res Dogs episodes now, and from the jump, the first episode, I'm just like, the representation in this, like no one Native looks alike in this show.
Right. And I like how they fit like it's not just like one tribe. They just a little bit of everywhere, so everybody can relate. I also like how oh man, did I just lose my train of thought? I think I did.
It's okay.
Oh yeah, different perspectives. Like it's not Sterling writing every single episode. He's giving everybody tell their own stories because he doesn't. I mean, he has his stories, but eventually, you need to hear everybody else's stories too. And he's given them a platform and supported them in this way. So when Tasba got her chance to write this episode, man, she just shined, honestly.
Yeah, and
she was all shine. I mean, like even if I don't do another TV show ever again, like this has been one of the greatest things I've been able to accomplish. Yeah. And I did it with this amazing group of people.
It's gonna be hard to top. I don't think there's very many episodes in general I can think of, like moments in TV that could, for like Native representation, where I look at it. Like this is by far my favorite episode. Like season 2, episode 5. Before it was Mabel, episode 4. I think that's like number 2 for me. Yeah, just right in the feels.
But that's what I love most about this TV show, because it's able to make you laugh and cry.
Yeah, like all in the same.
There's laughter in it. There's also those moments that really hit you.
Yeah, and that shit was so real too. Talking in episode 5 when there was the moment where, Bear's mom's talking to her. They're cousins, right? They're not sisters. They're sisters in real life. Yeah, it's kind of yeah. They're cousins, and in the TV show, and she's like telling her like how it's easier for her, like how she's 1 living off the res, but 2 doesn't have kids, and just the realness of that like small piece of dialogue of just like it's and I live in the city now. I'm born and raised on the res, but I live in the city now, and I see I get like, I mean, just like the dichotomy between like city natives and non-natives, and that kind of like infighting that happens. So much of that relationship was just exposed in that one interaction, where it's just like, you live in the city, things are easier for you. You don't have kids, things are easier for you. And it's just like, man, like I would give anything to be able to live closer to. Yeah, I would live in. Yeah, you live in that 2 worlds where it's like a one half you're on the res, you have all this opportunity, you see people from the city having opportunity, on vice versa. Or like me, like I would give anything to have a job where I can support my family and live like closer to the res, if anything, back home. And I love that insight that people are starting to get, even if they don't pick up on it. Like it's out there someday for them to process it. And I think I appreciate that most about Res Dogs. Is like they don't slow down and explain shit. It's just like, this is life. You either get it or you don't. And this episode is the epitome of that. There's so much that goes over people's heads that it's like so many jokes that like are so layered that you just don't have to explain. And I love that it's like, either get it or you don't. Like we're not going to slow down and like pull over and tell you what it means. And I feel like for a long time, non-native people who are at the helm of native representation felt like, oh, the audience isn't going to get this. We have to put a hat on a hat, but with this show, it's just like, no, people will either get it or they don't, and they still love it, even if they don't fully understand. But then those of us that do, it's just like, how is this show existing?
And even if they don't get it, I like how it opens up that window of conversation for people that do want to know.
Yeah.
And then like, are we going to tell them, or are we just going to?
Yeah. Yep.
Gonna tell them.
Yeah. So it's funny. So I was talking about episode 5, the vaginal steaming part of that. I've never seen that on anything, movie, television, but I didn't even know that was a thing. So I got really, really sick like 2 months ago. I got COVID, and then I caught bronchitis right after, and it was terrible. Yeah, upper respiratory infection. I caught like the whole works, and I couldn't breathe to save my life because it had mucus. So I was like Googling steaming, like because I was like trying to figure out how to do a steam, and vaginal steaming flooded my Google search. I had no idea what vaginal. I went to my wife, it was just sickly, just like, what is this? Like, and she's like, Ian, this is a real thing, and just educated me on like vaginal steaming. And then like a month later, the episode comes out. You guys are like squatting over a freaking like kettle, and I'm just like, oh my god, this is amazing. It's amazing timing. And so I love that, like, one, like that was in the show, that like to show like sexuality in a positive way of just like Native women being sexual, being okay in their bodies, which is never the case. Usually you have people like super reserved or just like hypersexualized. Like it's never like the truth. Can you talk a little bit about like why that's so important to finally show on screen?
Because I feel like, gosh, why does that need to be shameful? Why does it have to be secret? And I feel like when you keep stuff like that secret, that's when bad situations can happen. Or misunderstandings can happen. So when you open that window and you talk about it and you show it and you normalize it, I think it makes us all safer in general. It should be talked about. It's nature. It's our life and our ways. And I think it just adds on to why women are so sacred and why we need to take care of our women and why our women are special and strong. And I think a lot of times we forget that, or the industry likes to just, brush that under the rug or under the table and just objectify women.
There's a test called the Isla test. Have you ever heard of this?
It sounds familiar, but
yeah, the Isla test. It's came up by a writer. I can't remember her name. Alana D, I believe. I don't remember. I apologize. She's a follower of the show. I'm a listener of the show, and I apologize. But the Isla test she created, she's a blogger, she's a writer, she's Native. But she came up with this test because of like her observations of how Native women are viewed in cinema and television. And the Isla test is basically like, can you name a movie where the Native woman doesn't get raped or killed, where the Native woman isn't sought after? I'm sorry, doesn't end up in a relationship and isn't end up with a white man. Right. And there's like nobody that meets that criteria except for yeah. And so like she came up with it because of Devery Jacobs' character in Rhymes for Young Ghouls. Like she fit that mold, so she named it after her. And amazing. there's very few characters that fit this. Like I think of like in Blood Quantum, there's like the main character at the very end. For the life of me, I can't remember her name. But like there's like a handful. Like on one hand, you could name all.
I'm starting to think, and
yeah. And but in this one, all of you all meet this criteria, and it's like insane. It's an ensemble, and you all meet that criteria. And you have that moment where like Tatanka means you kind of in your head, it's like, oh, he's gonna be swept off her feet by some Native man, and then after a while, she's just like, well. And I love that she doesn't even hang her head. She's just like, well, them's the breaks. Let's go back to our room and have some junk food. It's like, we're okay. Still got life goes on. I still got to go down and go back home and hold down the fort, continue to raise my son and be the head of the household, be both parents. And there is no woe is me. It's just like, well, that's how it goes. Life's hard being a single mom, but we're okay. I don't need a man. I don't need a partner. And I love that. And that shouldn't be a monumental thing to show, but because of our history representation, lack of representation, it is. And your character, I really liked your character because you came from a perspective of, I feel like it was just like there were so many generations represented. It was like in terms of age and size, but also skin color. Like I said, like none of you all look the same, even though you had two people that are sisters. Like none of you look the same. Can you talk about like why that's important for people to see, to show like just the diversity of appearance?
Because we are so diverse. I mean, it's just being truthful. Like we're not all the same like that. We all take our own different paths and make our different choices, and just stereotype us into one type of person. It's important to know that we're in different lights and different bodies, and like you said, different skin colors. We're different, even though we're all Native.
Yeah, I think even just within its own tribe. I mean, just you can talk about the different Native nations themselves, but even with your own Native nation, like nobody looks the same. And so many times, I feel like for such a long time in the film industry, they've portrayed this like one look that they've tried to have. And I've heard it from people, like Native actors that have said they were denied roles for a long time, or they didn't get the roles because they didn't have the look, the look that they were looking for. And thankfully, because of Res Dogs, we're getting past that. I think people non-native and native are like, oh yeah, like natives look like everybody. And you've probably seen a native at some point in your life. You just never put it together because they weren't wearing a beaded something. They weren't wearing a feather in their hair.
Wearing feathers. Where's the feathers in the bead?
Yeah, for real. I wanted to talk about some of your other works. On top of you being on the 1491s, I wasn't aware of that. But this isn't the first time you worked with Sterling. You were in Miko before.
I was.
Yeah.
Okay, just for like a little slither of a part, but I made it.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about how like you crafted the relationship with Sterling and the 1491s and what that was like?
So the first time I met the guys, I mean, I was probably just out of high school. And even in high school, like I grew up watching their very first videos. That's kind of where they took off, was on YouTube. And I had a boyfriend who was even really big on YouTube at the time. He had like 20,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Dang.
So this boyfriend I had in high school, we were like the YouTube couple. Like we were making videos all the time, outside of school. And eventually we made a couple videos, I think, that caught the attention of Ryan Redcorn, because he's a local Oklahoma person. And I think it was him and my boyfriend that made the first interaction with each other. And then after they made their friendship, we kind of just all started like hanging out and getting introduced to each other. And when the 1491 seen that, oh, Whitebird's girlfriend, is funny too, let's get her into something, that's just kind of where it took off. And I told them that like I've always wanted to be an actor too since I was little, so it just kind of helped support that.
Nice.
And I'm in a couple other YouTube videos if you want to look it up.
Okay. I'm gonna look those
up.
My first
one, oh my gosh, I can't believe them. Okay, so it's called Native American Porn Audition, but it's not what you think. It's not what you think. Just look it up.
I swear I've seen this one. Okay, yeah. You're sitting on the couch, right?
Yeah.
That's like you? Oh my god.
Stoic Off. Yeah, there's Stoic Off. There's Jealousy, I think. And then there's Turtle Island is probably one of my favorite ones that I'm in.
Nice. So you crafted this relationship with them years ago, or at least the 1491s, and it's can we just take a 1491 appreciation moment?
Absolutely.
Like for those of us that were like stands from day one, when we like
Slapping Medicine Man.
Yeah, Slapping Medicine Man, the Wolfpack audition, the day in the life of the MC. That is like that's the beginning of freaking Spirit right there. Day in the life of MC, like Dallas Goldtooth's character.
Love you, Dallas. I'm so happy for him. I'm so glad it was for him because it was meant for him.
Yeah, for sure. Like you see like some of the like what Dallas does. You're like, that's like an amalgam of all of his stuff he did in the 1491s, and it's like I told Bobby when I interviewed him, I'm like watching Res Dogs is like watching and like knowing the history of the 1491s is like watching your like hometown band.
Yes.
It's just like from day one, I was there. I went to school at Dartmouth, and they went in 1491s, came up to my college, when they were doing their rounds and everything. And it's just like to see them go from like just touring college campuses and performing in like chapter houses and tribal council kind of back rooms. You were on that stage, where it's just like some places you don't have a microphone. It's just a bunch of people in front of you going from res to res and just entertaining native folks to this. Like, it's insane to see. But it's also like a testament to, I think the 1491s, they're just like, they just kept doing it for the love of it. They didn't do it for the money. And now they're able to support themselves, doing really well. But it's just like, gosh, I think like, it's just for the love of laughter and the love of like true representation. Like they just kept pushing that crap out, and it was just like, God, it's so good, And can't believe you're here. Can't believe like it's all here now. And hats off to 1491s for sure.
Right.
Yeah. Amazing.
Can you take your mic for just a second? It's getting a little hard to hear you.
Oh, am I? Okay, sorry about that.
There you go.
Whoops. Okay. Let's see. So where are we at now? So let's chat about your work as a tattoo artist, because that sounds like what you do primarily day to day. Never had a tattoo artist on the show, but what is your clientele like? Do you mostly do like native art? Is it native focused? Is it like native centric, or is it just everything?
Well, in the beginning, I basically did anything I could do, like whatever anybody wanted, I was doing at the time because that was the work that I could get. And then as I've established myself over the years. I've set a couple standards for myself. So one thing I tattoo a lot of things, but there are some things that I won't tattoo. So for instance, like I don't do dream catchers anymore. I don't do like skulls wearing headdresses. I don't do like sexy white women in headdresses. You know what I mean? Like those type of things. I just rather would not. I'm not telling anybody that they can't get it. They can go get it, but I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm just tired of seeing those imageries and tattoos. I think it's kind of overdone. You know, they can be tacky. There's different reasons I have for not wanting to do those types of imagery. But what I do like doing is I really like knowing my clients and where they came from and their stories and their histories. And if I'm able to turn that into a piece of artwork and tattoo it on them for them to wear for the rest of their lives, that's where I get my most like happiness and fulfillment from. And so for different examples, I've had somebody bring in their beadwork that a family member has done, and I was able to like replicate that pattern of beadwork as a tattoo for them. People who are Cherokee often like to get syllabary tattooed on them, whether that's like their clan or their family name or where they're from, whichever, or phrases, things that they like in the language. I like to do that. Different things like pottery patterns, for instance. I've done a couple of ledger artworks, that style that's starting to come back. Like I really like that.
Nice.
One of my big inspirations, actually, shout out to her. Her name's Kira Morello. She's from Idaho, I believe. She's a tattoo artist, Shoshone, and her work is absolutely phenomenal. I've been following her for years now, and I really want her to tattoo me. But that's kind of what I aspire to be one day, to be like Kira, but in my own way, you know, using my tribe's patterns,
right.
Things like that is what I'm really trying to do in the future. But yeah, that's kind of what I like to enjoy. I like to enjoy tattooing like plant life and animal life. Things of nature, that sort of thing.
So there's two things I want to talk about with tattoos. One, like the representation in it, because I feel like tattoos and leather work, I feel like there's like a lot of I don't know what you call it. There's a lot of Indian loving in that realm, where it's like non-native people will almost like make it a thing of like, hey, I draw Indian stuff, you know, or I leather patch, you know, Indian stuff. It's like the skulls with the headdress and all that stuff, you know, and that is fed by what they see on film and television. But I'm curious why you think maybe just artists in general, like they feel like I don't know. It's kind of it's like art is an expression. But it's like when it comes to expressing as a non-native person, why do they gravitate toward like drawing native stuff, especially stereotypical native stuff? And it sells. And what do you think the root of that is? Maybe not the root, but I would just like to have a conversation around like that in general.
I also want to ask the same question, like why are they so obsessed with these images when we have so many more that are like more authentic in that way? And like the skull dresses, I mean, I know natives who really like that imagery too, and that's cool because I guess they relate to it. But I mean, I can relate to it too. Like a headdress, I'm native, like my tribes wear that, whatever. But like I think the symbolism of it being a dead native is what like really fucks with me. You know, I'm just so tired of seeing dead natives. I'm so tired of seeing like the dream catchers and knowing what those objects are for. And the fact that I see it misappropriated. Like I've been told like dream catchers are supposed to attract negative things, get trapped in the netting, and then disappear in the sunlight, you know, after, you know, it you know, gets killed or whatever, however you want it. It's like a flycatcher type of thing. But and then I see white people who like put their children's names in the netting, you know what I mean? And I'm just like, that's so backwards to me. I mean, they don't know, but I know as a native person, and I can't help but like snicker sometimes when I see it. But I mean, that's their body, their choice. They can do whatever they want. But me as a native person, I don't want to keep putting that type of imagery out. And yeah, the love for the stereotypical native stuff, I mean, I think it just is ingrained in some people's brain because that's what they've seen up until recently. You know, now native artists are making stuff for themselves and it's authentic in their own ways. It's not something that they've had to grasp onto because I think that's the only thing that they see out in the world that represents them, you know. And I think that goes for the same Redskins, you know, red men, all that other stuff.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting conversation to have. Just our own understanding of who we are. I mean, that says a lot about how we've been, I know brainwashed is too strong of a term, but how we fully don't even understand. You go to any basketball tournament anywhere, there's going to be a red men, a tournament, you know, a men's scene called Red Men. There's going to be people that embrace like Redskins and Blackhawks like gear. just because they think it's cool, they think it looks the part, they think like, oh yeah, it's something, it's representation, it's badass, and they wear it. And so I think there's a lot of the self-discovery we have to do as a people to understand, like, how do we view ourselves? How should we view ourselves? And I think that journey, everyone's on a different part of that journey. So, and it sounds like for you, you kind of drew your line in the sand. No more dream catchers, no more stereotypical imagery. Not condemning it, but definitely saying like that's something I'm not going to be a part of supporting.
Right.
So,
because there's one thing that I've learned growing up is that you can't control other people.
No.
Don't waste your time trying to fight people on the internet and get into arguments. Just lead by example.
Yeah.
And people that want to listen and watch, they'll listen and watch.
No, that's good perspective. I do have a question about just tattoos in general. So like tattoos, I don't know where your nation is on tattoos, like historically, traditionally. But I know like with ours, it's like a split house. Depending on how traditional you are, you're not supposed to get tattoos, and then some people do. Do you ever face that conversation with some of the native clientele or just native people you work with?
I do know that there are some tribes that are like, yeah, don't desecrate your body, don't do that. And then there's other people who are like, that's our thing, and I like and support both perspectives. I'm fairly new in my tattoo history learning journey. I just recently bought a lot of books that are about Southeastern tattoo designs or indigenous tattoo designs in general. I'm trying to learn on the historical stories behind that. I'm also, as I've tattooed people, I've made friends with my clients who work in archives, and I've been able to build those friendships and learn from those. Because just because I'm a native tattoo artist doesn't mean like I'm the know-it-all of when it comes to indigenous tattoos. I've Absolutely. Had to learn a lot myself because I'm not trying to, keep the misappropriation going. I'm trying to be as authentic to my clients as I can be and have them, try to be authentic to themselves. I've had people come to me and ask for certain things, and then I've been able to, in a good way, try to steer them in another direction, or say, what about this? Or like, who's your family? Like, because they have trouble even for themselves trying to figure out what it is that they want to put on their bodies for the rest of their lives, as an identifier. And so, I try to help them that way.
Yeah, no, that's good. So that's a tough one. Me and my wife, we're kind of split. I think she wants a tattoo at some point. I grew up in a super like strict house, so it was like no tattoos. So because of that, I've always wanted one. But when it comes to those questions of like, what kind of questions should you be asking yourself? Of like, because to me, I always have said like, I don't know what to get because I can't think of anything significant enough that I'd want to put on my body, because I would be worried that I'd have buyer's remorse like a year later, or I would change to the point where it's just like, man, why did I get that? And so I never did. But what kind of questions do you like go through with your clients when you're trying to figure out like, so right. What do you want? So what are you looking for?
Some people who are like, who really know where they come from, right? And they have the beadwork that their grandma made them, and I can replicate that. And then on the other side of the spectrum, there's people who are just like, didn't grow up with that, right? They just know that they have this blood in their veins, or they have this, those people in their families, but they're so disconnected, like all they can find is stuff on Google. So then we have to have that kind of trip together where we have to, okay, so like, what tribe is it? Are you just Native American? If you are just Native American, is there any Native American artists that you really admire? We can start out there and just have an appreciation for the artwork and that artist, or we can get more personal with it. Okay, it's your tribe, so let's research that. Let's see what kind of art that your tribe makes. Is there anything that you like? And if it's not the artwork, then what about stories? We could create our own artwork just based on the stories that your tribes have passed down, and that appreciation. So like, for instance, I've done a lot of my water spider designs, which is in the Cherokee story, the water spider is who brought us fire. And so in my water spider design, in her abdomen, there's like a flame that I put, and I've tattooed that a couple times just to have an appreciation for, for fire. But also in the story, people really underestimated the spider. And so I like how some people really admire that story and feel a connection to that. Like people underestimate them, or when we underestimate other people and take them for granted,
I love it. Well, thank you. That's good insight. Maybe you'll give me and my wife our first one then. We'll see. We'll have to link up and you can give my wife the first tattoo.
We can do like a henna tattoo so it can like wash away after a couple
Oh,
weeks.
there you go.
You know what I mean? We'll have a
sign me up. There you go. Sign me up for that. I love that. I wanted to segue to something else that you've done in your past. I talked a little bit about a few of your on-screen works, but you mentioned this in the FX Res Dogs takeover. Kind of did the 4-person interview with you ladies. You used to be a theater actor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you've done a handful of theater productions, and how this was like your first on-screen production. And so can you talk a little bit about like the significant differences, like just the main takeaways from your theater performances to compared to your on-screen?
Right. Okay. So I'm an actor. I act on stage and on screen. I've done a lot more stage work than I have screen work. And I think that's because, if on TV, on movies and TV, I've noticed that if you don't look the part, they're not going to pick you. It doesn't matter how good of an actor you are. You have to look it. Versus, in theater, it's really good for your acting chops to get that stage work, because in theater, you could be playing a 12-year-old, but like you're 27. But it doesn't matter because the audience is so far away. As long as you have that presence of a 12-year-old, that's how you're going to be seen. But it's kind of harder to play that on TV when, you're clearly 27. I mean, there are some actors out there who are really blessed that can play those roles, and they're like 30s. Yeah. I don't know what kind of witchcraft they're using, but but I mean, props to them. But yeah, so like stage and TV are totally different things. But I try, just because I've been on TV now doesn't mean I'm going to stop doing stage and theater, because those are the things that are going to help me be a better actor and keep my acting skills sharp. So when I have to audition for the on-screen stuff, I'll be ready for that too. Nice. I guess for any advice for people that want to be actors, definitely don't be afraid of the stage work. Get on that stage, and even if you're not on the stage in the spotlight, I mean, just being in the environment, being a costume person, being props person, director, writer, all those different hats, they all help you when it comes to getting into that industry.
No, so that's good perspective. So let's talk about that. What would you? I would like to think that because of this show, we're gonna have this flood of interest from young Native kids, not even young, just in general. I feel like of all ages are going to be excited of okay, what do I do now? That could be city or non-city. What would you recommend just in general for any Native people that are interested in getting into? I did hear
just recently, if you know about the Cherokee Film Office that just recently got established, they have an online database and they're asking not just for Cherokee people, they want people of all nations to be in this online database, so that writers, directors, producers have a place that they can go and look up and see you and be like, whoa, oh, that person has potential. Let's pick them for our project. Right. So if you can get on the Cherokee Film Office database online, I would definitely sign up for that. And I'm gonna get a good picture of yourself, a good headshot, any kind of experience that you have. I mean, if you have to start out small and you're just writing down YouTube videos, that's still experience that you've done. That's work that you've done, whether it's, YouTube videos or a full-on production at your local theater, it still counts.
Yeah, I'm gonna give props to YouTube for one, and then hate on my tribe second because of the Cherokee Film Office. So the first one is YouTube. I think YouTube is a fantastic, not talked about medium that everyone has access to. The problem is there is some cost to entry, but we all have smartphones now. These things can film in 4K. If you have a smartphone, you can get started today. Just getting to work, putting your work out there. We all suck at the beginning, no matter what you do. But you just keep grinding at it. You keep getting better, and then who knows? You started in high school, right? It sounds like making just after high school. I started acting when
I was 6. So a little side bit, maybe a little note I should include is that in Res Dogs, Auntie B, the actress that plays Auntie B, is my actual aunt in real life. Her name's Kimberly Norris Guerrero. She's my mom's sister. Growing up, she even starred on Seinfeld for an episode of The Cigar Store Indian. She played Jerry's girlfriend. And so growing up, knowing she was in my family and watching the things that she was a part of, that's what my huge inspiration for being an actor started. And so when I told her I was 6, is when my Aunt Kimberly wrote an independent film called Standingcloud, which was loosely based about my mom. And then I was in that little small movie, and I played myself. I was 6, and so that was my first real experience being in front of a camera, being on a little film set or whatever, and it just kind of took off from there. What was it? I was acting in my school plays. I started out small, doing the acting in school plays and school musicals. I was Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz in high school. I did speech and debate competitions. I went to college for a while at Oklahoma City University. I was in a main stage production there. And just all those little tiny nuggets have built me up to the actress that I am today. And I just want to point out that, like, when you're being an actor and you're being in this industry, you're going to hear no probably 10,000 times before you hear a yes. But you just need the one yes. And there's been lots of times in my life where I've had ups and downs and times where I'm not acting at all and I'm just focusing on my artist or my artwork. And then all the acting gigs will go up and I'll be doing all the acting until it goes back down and I'll do the artwork. So it kind of keeps me in this, balance of stuff that I'm doing.
It's so, yeah, it seems like everything, like with my show, I'll hit a plateau of like listeners. I'm like, well, that's all the people that are ever going to listen to this show. I don't even know why I try. This thing is just like, it's just stalled, I don't get any feedback from the listeners. And then out of nowhere, it just hits a new height. Somebody on a bigger show or something mentions me, and then it like blows up for a bit. And then it just goes back to that, like, well, I guess we're here now. We hit the most amount of things. I don't know why being a creative is like that, and it's so frustrating. But if you can just make it through those times where you feel like it's just you and just focus, that's why you really got to love it too. I think that's the problem. Is if you don't love it, it feels like a job, and
you got to do it for you. Whatever
Absolutely.
you're doing, you really got to do it for you. And guess what? You don't know who's watching you. You're being watched and listened to all the time. You just don't know it. And people talk. A lot of my opportunities have come from people who watched me and they talk to somebody else and they're like, yo, Natalie would be good for this part. Why don't we ask her? And I hadn't even known about the project before.
That's awesome. No, it's good. And that's why you just got to keep putting your work out there. Just, you never know who's watching. You never know who's appreciating you in the background. And sometimes it's hard to hear that because you feel like I haven't heard a compliment in ages or ever, and it's like, am I really doing what I'm supposed to be doing? I think you can get in your head so much of just like, am I doing the right thing? And I think what Natalie said is the best of just like, you got to do it for yourself. And this podcast I started initially because there was nobody that I could find that was talking about Native representation on film and television. And I was like watching all these movies. I'm like, I watched Parasite win Best Picture. And I'm like, there's Native representation in this and nobody's talking about it. And so, started and, a couple of years later, here we are.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but it's just a testament to like, you just got to do it for yourself, and I think so many times this show has gotten off the rails because I wonder like, what do people want to hear? And it's just like, well, I brought the listeners because I was just talking about what was important to me. And so that's great advice that translates across different mediums. So the question, we kind of like missed it. I kind of missed my mark, but I wanted to talk about like the difference between like stage acting and like on-screen performances, because you had mentioned it a little bit in your Res Dogs episode, but it's okay. Because I think what I want to talk about now is just like your perspective of like the landscape of Native representation. So like when you grew up, like what did you, you were very fortunate to have Kim Norris Guerrero as your aunt. So you could see yourself a little bit like on screen.
Right.
But I think for those of us that like didn't watch Seinfeld growing up, like we didn't know. I met Kim Guerrero in high school. She did like this traveling road show of like art and like poetry and acting. I'm not even sure what it was called, but I just got volunteered by my school to show up, and we went and I met her, and we went to Rough Rock, Arizona, and she came with this like traveling group of people, and they taught us like, we went through these different like workshops, and one of them was acting, and then she introduced herself, and so she was on the episode of Seinfeld, and just like, that's a massive show that I've never seen, but it was so weird to like finally meet like a Native actor in person. That was the first time I ever met a Native actor in person. But for you to see that like growing up, I'm sure your idea of like Native actors was different than mine. But who were your like major influences or like people you looked up to growing up? Obviously your aunt.
Obviously my auntie was number one for sure. She was always on the back of my head. I grew up watching like Smoke Signals and Dreamkeeper. She was in Dreamkeeper as well. Smoke Signals, Irene Bedard, she was one of my favorite ones to watch. And what's cool about that is that as I got older, we actually worked together on an independent film called The Heart Stays.
Nice.
And so just even to like meet her, I love my auntie, she's family. But then when I met Irene, I was like, holy smokes, like, I could do this. I could be one of the Native actors out here, because it's such a small, like little group of people that you think of, like Irene, West Studi, Adam Beach, I
like
could go
Tattoo
on.
Cardinal, Gary Farmer.
Yeah, Tattoo. Yeah. And I even got to meet her on Killers of the Flower Moon.
Oh,
so just
gosh.
it's like I gotta catch them all. No.
Yeah.
I even was able to work alongside West Studi in a play that I did called Reclaiming One Star.
Oh my God.
That was about the Washington football team and the origin of that and how that got started. So, gosh, it's just been kind of surreal to be able to, and after Res Dogs too, to be alongside these people that I've seen on TV and try really hard not to geek out.
That would be so hard for me. That's like bucket list people to meet, like I agree with Dart and Gary Farmer, West Studi, Tattoo, but you've like worked alongside these people and have been on set with them. That's what I love most about this show is like you can see the excitement of just like Gary Farmer's right there, West Studi's right there. Like we're bringing back these people that we grew up with, almost like a tip of the cap to Native communities. Because I mean, people who are like older, like non-Native people, they might remember and know who West Studi and Gary Farmer are, but like for us, it's like, I don't know, this is like a Marvel's Avengers thing. Like
that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what it feels like.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
it's just like, you can do this. Like, I didn't know this was allowed, to bring all of this star power.
All the time. It's like, this is allowed. We're allowed to do this. I'm allowed to have this much fun while I'm working and getting paid for it. I would do this for free.
Yeah. It's amazing that you're getting paid to do this. And I think it's amazing that like, this is going to continue. I wanted to talk a little bit about, I mean, I think this show is going to keep going for who knows how many seasons. But I haven't had a real chance to talk to anybody in the industry about like Rutherford Falls, unfortunately.
Oh, yes.
But I would just like your opinion. Like, what do you think happened? Like, I feel like it really got its legs in season 2. I'm like, man, this is gonna.
I felt like I loved season 2. Absolutely love season. I mean, I love the whole show in general, but season 2, I was like, man, it's starting to catch fire now. I'm like, what else are we gonna see in the next season?
Absolutely.
But, right? Oh gosh. And it was one of those shows that, I mean, like we said for Res Dogs, we're just going. Like either you're on the bus or you're not. We'll, maybe tell you about it later. But on Rutherford Falls, it does go kind of at like that slower pace where it kind of explains it for the other, wider audience, which is okay. I'm down for that because we're still having our representation and our stories told. Shout out to Jana too. She's big hugs stuff for her because she was incredible. I heard rumor that I think the reason it possibly stopped was because they made jabs at Yellowstone. I think that's probably the one thing I've heard. But also, I'm just like, why? Like, who cares? It's a great show.
Yeah. Yellowstone has its place, but it's not for me. 1883, same thing. I've made my opinions about Taylor Sheridan very well known, and just his casting choices in particular for certain individuals I've made very well known. But like to just, I thought that was great. Taking jabs, the Adirondack like section of Rutherford Falls, that was genius because that's real representation. Like that's Native people like hating on it for like, because we hate on it. But it was a shame because I want to talk about this in my episode whenever I get around to it, but the Pretendian episode or like the Pretendian segment of episode
that got
2,
me so good. That got me so good because I was like, I'm not racist, but that guy's, there's something off about that guy. And then when it happened, when they said that, I was like, oh my god! I was like, so good.
and Michael Grey's scene where his monologue, basically like talking to the Pretendian like across the table, that was like that just segment of writing was like the most beautiful writing I've ever heard in my life. Where it's like where he explains like why Pretendians is a problem and why seemingly something that seems like, oh, why is it a big deal like to non-Native people? Like it just summed it up so great of just like you're taking all the benefits, what little benefits Native people have, like you're taking all of that without experiencing any of the pain. And just
it's a weird feeling too, because it's like they love us but they don't like us. They don't want to share the struggles, but they want to share the benefit, and it doesn't match.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting. Like I think Black culture, there's that saying of like, why do you love us? Why do you love the culture and not us thing? And I think Native people to a degree have that, but it's not even our culture. It's just this idea of what our culture is. And I think that's what's gross. It's like you have this idea of who Native people are, and that's what you glom onto. that's what you like think of when you're like, oh, 1% native on my 23andMe. Like you think that is wrapped up in that identity, and it's just gross. And I love that Rutherford Falls was touching on that, because Res Dogs isn't touching on that just because it's a very different show, and that's why I loved it. Is Rutherford Falls was going on in this such a different direction, and it was awesome. And
Yeah.
I was like, finally, like season 2, it was really getting good, and I'm like, I cannot wait for season 3.
I know.
And it
Oh
didn't
my
happen.
gosh, my heart breaks for it. It was
Yeah.
such a good season. If
And
you
you could
haven't,
have
go watch it.
go watch Rutherford Falls. It's still out on Peacock. Gosh, I really hope that's not true, that just because they took jabs at Yellowstone, but it still proves that the juggernaut is still alive, you know, like the idea that like non-natives still run things, unfortunately, like when it comes to controlling the narrative. But shows like Res Dogs like can completely change that. I'd like your opinion real quick before we go, because you were on Killers of the Flower Moon. I would like your opinion on I got really clear out of nowhere just now. In my hair, it's headset anyway. Sorry. I'd like your opinion on like non-natives like telling native stories. And I don't mean to I don't say this like get you in trouble or anything. I'm just curious on your perspective. Because I think it can be done. I think it can be done. It has been done respectfully, you know. But in your experience, you know, what does that look like to you? Because you worked on a show with Martin Scorsese at the helm, who's not native, but he's telling a native story, and the source material is nonfiction, which I think helps.
Yeah.
So yeah, can we talk about whatever you can offer with this experience?
At the beginning of Killers of the Flower Moon, you know, I've talked to a lot of people about that project, and while it was going on too, there's lots of talk happening. And I heard through the grapevine that in the beginning, the script was written in a way that was really centered around the FBI, because this was the FBI's first case, and came off as like that white savior type of theme. And so as they got further into production, a lot of rewrites happened in the script, which is a good thing, because Scorsese had this moment of, oh, this isn't about the FBI. This is about these Osage women. And so the script had a whole rewrite happen, and now the story is more centered around the Osage families, specifically the sisters.
Badass.
That's something that I've heard, and I'm really looking forward to seeing. My part's a small part, but it is hopefully going to be in there. I did actually get the chance to shake hands with Leonardo DiCaprio.
No, I was just going to ask you. Oh my gosh.
Yes, I did.
Jeez.
I did. And I shook hands with Martin too, so it was really cool, really, really cool. And Riker's in it too. I hope we get to see him.
Yeah, nice.
With each other on set, and been waiting like years to post this picture, but I'm waiting for the movie to come out first, you know, really put it out there in people's faces. But yeah, I have high hopes for this movie. I really do. I mean, I hope that Scorsese really took his time and patience with this one. I mean, gosh, it's been years in the making, literally. So I think it's going to be worth the wait, and I'm really happy that people know this story. It's a very sensitive story. It's a story that doesn't have an ending. I mean, you know, the effects of the story are still ongoing. I hope it's received well.
No, that's good perspective to give, because even being open to rewrites, that's really important. You know, I've seen good instances of native representation by non-native showrunners. One that I had was Dexter New Blood. You know, it had Julia Jones in it. I had the cultural consultant Caleb Abrams on the show. I interviewed him and talked to him about that. You know, he was Seneca, and he talks about just the care and grace like afforded to the native people, the native community.
Did you like that? You like
it? Yeah.
I liked it too. Okay.
I was a huge Dexter fan.
And when that season happened, I was like, no way. I was like, are they talking about, babe, they're talking about it. Oh my God.
I was stoked the show was coming back in general. And then when I heard there were natives in it, I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like,
they're just going out with a bang.
Yeah.
This is great.
So great. It was so good. And in talking to Caleb, it just sounded like it was almost like Res Dogs, like in a way where it's like, let's just not explain stuff. Like there was that scene where we're getting kind of in the weeds here, but there was a scene where Dexter is sitting at the dinner table, with his son and Julie Jones' character and her daughter with Sequoia. and they're all at the table and they're like, well, what are you gonna do with the white deer? It's like, well, and then they start talking about what they're gonna do with the white deer, and it just goes to Dexter's inner monologue, and he's just talking to himself, and they're like, Dexter, is that okay? Can we use your truck? So they explain exactly what they're gonna do, but they like just took him out of it. And I really like that they did that. Like small stuff like that, you can do it right. Prey. Dan Trachtenberg is not native, but he told a very native story, even though it was a sci-fi story. So I think it can be done in a respectful way. And I think there are instances where it's like, hey, you can do it right. And you can also hose it up completely if you think you know. And I think that's where you get into dangerous territory. But I'm optimistic because I just feel like like Leo, he's a really like conscious person. I would like to think that, he would interject if he feels like something's wrong, or I feel like he's open to feedback too. And I would like to think Scorsese, hearing that you all rewrote the thing multiple times, that he kind of saw the light. That like it's not about the FBI, it's about the tribe, it's about the people, the community that get screwed over consistently, still to this day. Like that's the story you should be telling, not about the FBI's first go around.
Right.
Yeah, it's a fantastic. I'm really excited for that. And that's going to go straight. That's an Apple TV production, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I believe so. I think I heard word that it was supposed to come out this November, but then they pushed it forward to this coming spring. I think they're going to have a film festival, and then hopefully it'll be released after that.
Oh my gosh, and you're in everything. Is there any other work that you can talk about that you're in?
I just know that I have some art markets coming up that I'll have booths at, signing headshots and having prints to sell. I'm trying to launch my brand and reopen my Etsy shop with some product. Like I said, if I'm not acting, I'm creating. So anything I can slap my artwork on, that's what I'm working on.
Nice.
Just trying to learn something new. Keep it
nice. Well, I think I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show, talking about just native stuff in general. But
sure.
But I think it's fun that like. I feel like we should just have a segue about talks around Dexter New Blood and our fandom for Dexter, yes. Because let's take a moment to talk about that. What did you think of the ending? And then we can end the show. But what did you think of Dexter? How it ended?
I mean, as much as we don't want to end Dexter, he had to.
Yeah.
But I really think it's cool that, like, oh my God, his son came back. I thought that was a trip. How they all just kind of brought that back around and tied it in a nice little knot at the end.
That was great.
The way they wrapped it in I think it was just really excellent writing, to be honest. And the fact that we Native people got to put the final stamp on it is just like the bow on top of the present. Honestly, it was great.
Absolutely. Loved it. I loved the show. I love that they recognized that the fans were not happy and they made an attempt to fix it. And
yeah, we had to have that closure.
Yeah,
had that. It was such a win for us. It was just like, yes.
Absolutely. And I think that made me so happy to see, and then talking to Caleb, that's just another Native guy in the industry, Native person that I can root for and be excited for their work. And, I can add you to this list now of people that you're in Killers of the Flower Moon. Like, I really hope your scenes, stay in and they make the final cut. And I think that's going to be awesome. Hearing Riker's on there, because Riker was on this show too. Like, that's going to be, there's just people you root for. Riker Six Killer, Nathalie Benali, now Nathalie Standingcloud. Like, there's like way more Native names out there than the main ones you see. Like, yes, Martin.
And there's going to be more. Awesome. There's going to be more. We're just having a beautiful renaissance of Native creatives in the industry in all aspects. The team, and just like getting rid of that crab in a bucket energy. We all need to support each other. A win for you is a win for me.
Yeah, I really need to stop saying mindset of scarcity, because crabs in a bucket really epitomizes like that situation of like how we've really cut each other down for so long. But now it's just like the opportunities are bountiful.
There's room for all of us. There's absolutely room for all of us. And,
Absolutely. Yeah. And what's great is behind the camera and, on camera, like there's writers that are getting shown what they can do on Rutherford Falls and now on Dogs,
showing their beadwork, costumers.
Yeah, I think that's such a beautiful part. So we had a costume designer I interviewed her on the show. She's a Native costume designer, and she talked about even just that, like Native artists like breaking through and be able to showcase their art on TV shows. Like that's a huge win, like that's major. Even if that's the only thing they ever do, like, fantastic. But I'm positive for some of these people, it's going to launch them into new work. And people are going to be able to see, like, why is the work on Dogs look so different than like this other production? It's like, well, probably because it's authentic on Dogs. and people are going to start calling for that and going to start asking more questions. And I can't wait. The horizon is bright, which is great, because I think pre-pandemic, it was like, are things ever going to change? Is Native representation ever going to look any different? But now it's just like there's so much coming, and
they need us. They need us. There's in the film and TV industry, movie industry, there's so many prequels, sequels, and remakes happening. And like, I feel like those coasts are dried up, and that's why everything's starting to move in the middle. And they need our story. And now it's time for us to step up. Absolutely.
And we have so many stories to tell. Time immemorial. We got plenty of stories to tell, not just fiction or not just nonfiction, but you can, and I can't wait to see. So Natalie, thank you so much for coming on. And this was awesome. And good luck to you and everything that you do. And I might have to hit you up for a tattoo someday.
Cool. I'll be in Tulsa, Oklahoma when you come to see me.
All right. Cool.
Thank you so much. Talk to you later. Bye.